Okay, it is recorded.
Cool.
Um, Skype says I legally have to tell you that.
Oh wow.
Um, okay, so here's how the game went. It was pretty poetic because I was like, I know exactly what to do here. Um, Apparently, he told me after the game that he played the move order wrong or something, but because he knew that.
Wait, I'm
after.
already really confused because this is not the Anasharovich game, unless it's a different game.
No, you showed me a game with the London where you played C4.
Ah, so this is. I don't think this is Anasharovich game.
Oh, it's probably not
But
her.
this
Someone
is
else.
something along the lines. I think I remember what I showed you. Um,
No,
it,
you showed me this game. I remember exactly.
yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. It was a game between two other players who I'm blanking on the names. Uh,
Okay,
but you got. I'm assuming you got in like B5 and B4.
I got in
In
B5.
B5. Okay.
Um,
Yeah, because this
we will.
position is pretty fresh in my mind.
Oh, okay, good. So everything went well. I played H3, H6 because
Mhm.
of what you told me. He
H3.
played similarly, and then the night tour going to A4.
That's awesome.
Uh,
Yeah.
and he just kicked my bishop, but he eventually had to bring his bishop to D1. And I think the main move is to play bishop C2. I
Hmm.
think, but he took my knight, and then
Ah. So I don't
I
know if I showed you this specific structure, but there's a
you,
nice idea here of like putting the rook on B5 and just going after the pawn because it's so hard for white to defend the pawn because you're controlling B1 and C2.
I put it on A6.
Oh, so A6 and B6, I guess it's similar.
I
I
should have
guess
put on I should have put it on B5 because I ended up doubling rooks on the
yeah, I was gonna
B5.
say that sometimes you bring the one rook to B5 and the other rook will come to A6. And
Oh,
it's some really interesting like maneuvering, but it can pay off if you win the B pawn.
yeah. Oh, if I knew that, I wouldn't have wasted the tempo. I'll show you the next couple moves,
Yeah,
but
let's see it.
eventually, uh, I don't know what I did, but
Okay. You made one subtle mistake,
oh,
which always
you
makes
can
me
tell.
cringe.
Oh, go for it. Tell me.
It always makes me cringe when people do this. Queens are off the board, right?
Oh, you castle.
Usually,
Oh,
like you want your king in the center in these types of positions. Like here, you want
uh,
your king in the center, like on D7, so the bishop's defended, and then you bring the rook in. It's not a huge error,
uh,
but it's something like over time it should be built into your intuition.
yeah. Okay. That
And
I
then
didn't analyze this game yet.
actually one,
Yeah.
one more thing. When you play
Sure.
king
Tell me.
D7 and they bring their knight here with ideas of knight E5, you play F6. And then your
Got
king
it.
is safe, it can't be exploited, and life goes on. So,
Here, I'll
okay,
put that in the notes actually,
yeah.
just to make sure. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Actually, knight F3 would run into bishop takes E4 there, but just from a
Oh,
more idea perspective.
okay. Okay. Oh, you're right, huh? Okay. It takes, and eventually now my rook goes to B5, and
Okay,
then
gotcha.
I end up. Okay. I, this is all very suspicious. Suspicious. But eventually my rook goes to B6, and then
Nice.
um.
It still takes
uh,
work to break through, but I guess after rook B3 is actually very nice. I
Yeah.
like playing through there, like in this position, I didn't see the breakthrough, but then now I'm realizing white can't stop rook B3 because the rook is just stuck on B1.
Hmm. Hmm.
And like
So
I was gonna say he might want to do like rook C2 and knight D2, but there's just no time for it because he's tied down to E4. Like your bishop is just such a key player in this position.
I know this bishop is so good. But yeah, that was the London game, and so I won this game very easily because
That's
of
so awesome.
what you showed me. So I like a couple months ago. So I appreciate that so
Right.
much.
I forgot I showed you that. I should be able to find the game. Yeah, it's coming up right here. The game was between Petkov and Nikolov.
Oh, Nikolov, yes, that guy.
I'm going to insert it just to so you can compare what happened. Because you got the same
Okay.
exact position. He played e6 first,
I see.
which I don't know how much of a difference it makes. Like, it might even transpose. Oh, actually, this is very similar. Did this transpose exactly?
I'm not looking at the opening Explorer, but I'll look at it right now.
Oh, I'm just curious if, like, you had this exact same position after knight b6.
Yeah. What move is this? 14?
Oh, except you had this position without e6. Okay,
Yeah,
it's a
I
little
see.
bit different.
But I play
Um,
e6 eventually. When you play e4.
right. I guess one thing to remember for next time. Maybe
Yes.
next time you'll throw in e6, but if he plays bishop c2, as what happened in this game,
Uh-huh.
there's just such a strong positional idea, and like the rest of the game flowed really nicely. Black takes, rook takes c2, and this is a bit different because the rook is now safely on c2 defending the pawn. So very key move here for black.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm cheating. I'm
yeah,
looking at the Open
yeah,
Explorer,
that's
but
fine. b4 is such a thematic move. And it's something you want to consider even when pawns are on c3 and a3, because there's many times where there's some pin against a1, either the a1 square or the rook being on a1.
yeah, so good. Well, I got excited playing this, and I wanted to show you because I was like, Eric taught me this.
Nice. Yeah, that's great to see. It worked out. It worked out very nicely. So
Yeah. But other than that, I feel like I think in my email I told you that I feel very average in many of the areas, and I'm not sure where my focus should be. So, um, one part of me is like, oh, I want to, be better at the close Sicilian. Another part of me is like, oh, my end games are really bad, and all these different things. So,
well,
how to navigate the study plan and like,
right, and I can certainly provide assistance with that. The first thing I'll say, there's no correct approach, and it
yeah,
really depends. Like when I work with students, it usually depends on like their goals and their like how much time they can devote to chess, and then determining like what exactly like your ambitions are, and then forming a plan around that. I will say where you're at. I mean, I think you're in a good mind frame. Like it seems like you're very self-critical, which is actually a good quality for a chess player, because then that way you'll be more inclined to like work on your weaknesses and make decisions that will benefit you in the long run. You do want to be patient, because improvement, like I think you wrote, like you want to at some point become a master, but it doesn't happen. Obviously, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years of hard work,
yeah,
because the higher you go, the smaller the differences will be that separates you from the next level, and the harder you have to work. And a lot of it, I would say that one of the biggest things which separates you from master level is just experience.
yeah,
Masters are very well able to rely on like previous experience. Like when they play chess, sometimes their mind works differently. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, and this applies to the difference between like master and grandmaster too, where grandmasters just have like such a wealth of information. So they've
yeah,
devoted tens of thousands of hours to the game. So when they play chess, they'll be able to reference ideas or games that they've seen before. Um,
yeah,
and now you're getting to the point where like you played this game and you were able to kind of use this one game that I showed you before to apply in your own game, which was great.
But
Uh,
imagine like learning like hundreds of these games
yeah,
and memorizing the ideas behind them and stuff versus
exactly.
just
And
one lucky one.
yeah, and there's actually a word there I want to correct, because you say memorizing.
Oh,
Just
understand. Sorry.
like some players will just memorize games because they're capable of it. Like Carlson, I think there was some 60-minute segment where like it was said that he's memorized over 10,000 games, which I would believe. And there was some segment with Fabiano saying he's memorized like millions of moves of opening preparation, which is also probably true.
Hmm.
Um, Where you're at, I think it's more about internalizing ideas. So putting yourself in a situation where you're really understanding the positions you're getting into. And even if you forget like specific moves in the variation, or even if you study an endgame and you forget exactly how to draw the endgame or win the endgame, you'll at least be in a situation where you can be able to have the right kind of mental tools to figure things out over the board. So in terms of forming a plan, I think it's very important not to be too focused on the rating goal, even though that's, of course, like the eventual kind of destination. But you want to focus more on study goals. Like rather than focusing on the final destination, you kind of focus how to get there.
Got it. So around the process. So we should be celebrating like, you don't celebrate like plus 20 rating points. You celebrate, oh, you've studied like
Like
5 hours on
solving
this.
10 exercises or working through a whole game. Like if you could like review maybe 3 master or high level master games a week in the openings you play or in the openings you want to learn, that's probably more celebrated than gaining 20 rating points.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
ratings will fluctuate. Your overall understanding usually just goes up over time, but it doesn't correlate exactly with rating.
To the rating, yeah.
So
Okay.
it's one of those things which took me like a long time to understand.
Yeah.
But
Study
then,
goals. Yeah.
yeah, study goals. And when we're talking about this is more along the lines of kind of general studying and general preparation. There's a whole nother kind of category we can talk about, which is specific tournament preparation. When you're maybe a few days away from a tournament and what to do and kind of how to prepare yourself, because that's a whole other kind of branch of what you should focus on.
Sure.
So I guess it depends, like what your schedule is like, how many tournaments you have coming up, and then kind of figuring out at least some structure and maybe even like putting together a calendar of what exactly you'll do and making sure things are at least your bases are covered.
Yeah, I would love out of the session to walk away with some kind of plan or some kind of a calendar like that, where I can kind of tell you a little bit about, time, how much time I want to devote, and instead of thinking about rating points and things, we would come up with like, oh, Tam, you should do like 5 problems from imagination and chess, or something like that, so I can like keep momentum going. So that was like my hope of what I would love to walk out of today's
Gotcha.
session. I totally agree with everything you're saying.
Now you want to save time for going over a couple of the Sicilian games too, right?
Yeah, how about let's do that first to get out of the way, and then the last part would be about the study plan. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I was thinking, I've actually
Or
never done this before, but I was thinking it might be useful just to like share a Google Doc just to collaborate, because it seems like
oh, yeah,
trying to keep everything organized on Lichess is not the best system, especially for developing a study plan.
yeah. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'll make a
But
Google Doc and then I'll share it in the lead chess
sweet.
chat.
Okay.
Okay, but
But do
let's
you want to
go.
start with the games first?
Yeah, let's do the
Okay.
game. I mean, the games, the two of them are very similar in the
Yeah.
structure. So I think just going over the main ideas of one of the structures is
Sure.
like more than enough. But it was very embarrassing. I think we should start with
The
this
Rohit's
game
game?
against Rohit.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
actually, your
was
other
very
game,
embarrassing.
well, embarrassing in the sense, okay, you were basically just completely crushed in the middle game. But I don't think you should be too embarrassed about this game, because let me ask you, like, was there a clear moment where you made like just a careless mistake, or do you know where you went wrong?
My guess is like I don't know where to put my dark square bishop,
Okay.
and then I played b3, and
Hmm.
he castled queenside, and I was like, wait, I never seen this before, and so all my
Right.
pieces was just really bad. When
Yeah,
there was
I
no
guess
one
like at some
mistake, there was no
point maybe you were
blunder, but
embarrassed about the position, but it wasn't like you made one like fatal blunder that you could identify right afterwards.
oh,
Um,
okay,
I think this is a great game where like it wasn't clear where you went wrong, and the position slowly, but at some point more quickly deteriorated, and then it was just really bad. But you
Yeah.
did miss some opportunities. Like if you knew the right plan from early on, you could have had some very nice pressure. Uh,
Okay.
so there's a few things I'll kind of suggest to do differently. I think the opening is nice. It was nice to see you played this kind of new knight e2 move, and you got kind of this close Sicilian position. Um, and then you play d3. This is actually the first thing I'll just throw out there in case you would want to explore. Normally, from this position, you have uh, two ways to proceed into the middle game. One way is to like do what you did, play d3, f4, castle, and just kind of get this traditional closed Sicilian setup.
Yeah.
The other approach, I think, would be very, very much worth looking into is to play d4. And even maybe not to play d4 immediately, maybe to castle first, see what black does.
Yeah.
Let's say bishop e7, then play d4. Um, and we could honestly spend like a whole hour or two just talking about this sort of position and how to treat the position going into the middle game, because it's a lot different compared to the traditional closed Sicilian. Like this is now turning into an open Sicilian.
Open Sicilian.
Black
Yeah.
almost always has to take. If black doesn't take, you play d5, and then you get this position, which it's a very rich middle game position with many ideas for both sides.
Hmm.
But I think it would be more interesting to play. I think you could learn a lot more if you studied some positions like this. And this is an approach that you could have easily taken in the other game that you played too, similar
Yeah.
position, where I think you played d3 first in the other game too, but you could have castled and then put yourself in a situation where you can consider d4. And I've included I've actually included one game here, which is, I think, a good, like, kind of nice line to start with. If you wanted to explore this further, you get to this position, and then key move here, which maybe you wouldn't know otherwise if you didn't study this too deeply, but to take on c6.
Huh.
And this is completely new territory for you, but it's an interesting kind of thematic idea to understand, is that black has three different ways to capture. Queen takes c6 would be a fun move
Yeah.
due to e5.
Uh-huh.
B takes c6 is the second worst move because you still play e5, and you get this kind of nice positional line with this structure being very unkind to black's dark squared bishop. This knight being when knight d5 is played, you avoid the trade of knights and you play knight a4. And I drew some
Oh,
really
you don't go
nice.
for. Interesting.
Well, knight e4 actually might allow queen takes e5.
Oh, I see. I see.
Sometimes
I
that
was
might be
thinking,
an idea, but
yeah, like some outposts on here, for example, was
right.
knight a4.
In an ideal world, you might be able to achieve knight e4, but knight a4 actually reminds me of some like close Sicilian type ideas. I think we've gone over at some point where you do this kind of same setup with b3, c4,
The
bishop
grand
e2,
prix.
and you get this
Yeah.
really nice positional bind. And black
Yeah.
pieces are very restricted.
The obvious question is like, the pawn on e5 is blocking the b2 bishop. Would that be, like, I feel like that wouldn't make the
Oh,
bishop as effective, or?
yeah, that's kind of the nature when you have a center pawn. But the pawn is doing more good than harm for white.
Sure.
Because it's really discouraging black from moving this d pawn, so this d pawn's a backwards pawn. If the pawn ever wants to move to free up some more lines for the pieces, then it's seriously weakening to c6, and then it would open up your bishop
The bishop.
from
Ah,
b2.
I see.
So
Got it.
it's more about achieving a positional bind. Like when you put the bishop on b2, you're not necessarily trying to attack on the king side. You're just trying to restrict black in unraveling. And then, like long term, you might just want to continue building up and improving the position. Like maybe put the queen on g4, put the rook on d1, imagining maybe h4, h5, and you create this bind where it's much more difficult for black to come up with ideas.
Yeah, and black's play should be on the queen side, or try to be at least, or
It's
I
not
wonder
so
what.
easy. Like probably one of the best ways to understand this position is to try to play as black and
Yeah.
realize that there's no like immediately clear plans. Like maybe one idea is to play knight b6 and trade knights, which white is probably fine trading knights here, just because like the black bishops are still very much restricted, and still go for the c4 move.
Ah, I see.
And it's a nice positional game for white. It's not winning by any means, but it's one of these positions where like you would have more control and you kind of know, you have a better sense of what's going on well into the middle game.
Yeah, I like it. Okay.
So something to consider. And it's one of those things when you play the closed Sicilian, and then you switch to an open Sicilian, I think most of your opponents who would reach this position would not be so well prepared for d4.
Because they might be used to some other structure.
They might be used to like knight or for dragon, and they just play e6 against closed Sicilian, and then they're if you can study these types of maybe open Sicilian positions and understand the ideas, you'll be a lot more prepared for a lot of the opponents that you face.
Yeah. I can see it. And can we go back to what if d takes c6?
Oh yeah, d takes c6 is actually the main move.
Yeah.
You can still go for e5. I included a game here played by actually two of my favorite players. Playing white was Tivyakov, who's one of the strongest GMs who will play e4, c5, knight c3 on a relatively consistent basis. And then playing black is Michael Adams, who's known to be a really solid player. But I really like this this game where like Tivyakov completely outplayed Adams. Adams played rook d8, and this is a game probably to spend a bit more time on, but I'll give you a better, just a general idea of what happened. Queen f3, knight d5. Knight e4 still unfortunately can't be played, even though you would like to play it. So white allows the trade of knights and just goes for queenside expansion, pawn h4. It's very common in middle game positions when you have a pawn on e5 to just try and create play on the king side. And the idea with h4 is maybe twofold. One idea is to go control this this g5 square, maybe allow bishop g5. The other idea is just to play h5, h6, and try and create some holes in black's position. So game continues. White went for bishop g5, and now plays knight e4. Now I'm assuming, I didn't look too closely into this. I'm assuming there's some tactics.
Yeah, knight to I'm on my MacBook.
Knight f6, right?
Knight f6, yeah.
You saw that quicker than me. To still wake up a little bit.
Yeah, wake up a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but knight e4 is just such a nice square for the knight because there's some ideas of knight f6, there's ideas of knight d6. In the game, knight d6 is played, and this is just actually I have opening book turned on. There's been 3 games that reached this position, and white's won all of them. The problem for black is f7 is a target, and the knight can't be taken because the bishop is pinned to the rook.
Yeah.
And also there's another pin, like the knight's kind of pinned on d5. So very nice coordination for white. Now queen g4, probably threatening some bishop h6 move. Once the pawn is on g5, it's just a nice attack for white. Ideas now with king g2, rook h1. The game went on. Like, it was still a fight, but white had pretty much full control the whole game. I did like the way the game finished, because like white just exerted so much pressure and like just optimized everything. Like, sometimes it takes some appreciation for moves like c3, just completely restrictive, like being very patient, just understanding that black has so few moves. And then eventually, okay, things open up. Knight e8 was an amazing move. The rook's not defended, and knight f6 is intermediate move. Okay, so rook takes, and then white just wins the exchange.
Oh, wow.
So, such a nice model game. Yeah, and then this final position is just mate next move. So I didn't see this game until like an hour ago when I was like looking up. All I did was put in this d4 move, you use some of the opening explorer, play through the main line, and then find. This game stuck out immediately because okay, two of my favorite players.
Wow.
But this is something you can do on your own. Like you use Opening Explorer and look through a few games, maybe a more slow pace to build up
Yeah.
some longer term ideas.
Yeah. In this opening, let's go back for a quick
Sure.
second. Um, we're here. It looks like an open Sicilian, except our bishop's on G2,
Right,
and that's a big difference.
which is a
For
bit of a difference, yeah.
yeah,
I will say, because I play this setup for black with e6 and a6. Playing against players who put the bishop on g2 is the most annoying. Like I've had probably the worst results in
really.
this setup as black. Um, I think the bishop being on g2 is quite strong because it in many cases restricts this bishop from developing. Like there's other lines where the bishop goes to e2 where black plays like b5 and bishop b7 no problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bishop being on g2 is actually a fine approach and a very reliable approach, which many grandmasters have played as white.
Okay, I'm gonna look more into this. I've always like I try to avoid the open Sicilian because
I understand.
I memorize so much theory, all these things, but I think this is a different twist on it, and it'd be cool to catch people unprepared.
Yeah, I will say, I will say that I went through a similar phase. Like when I played Open Sicilian, I was pretty religious about it. And it took me several years until I realized that, okay, it was getting a little bit redundant, like the structures I was getting into. I wasn't getting the early advantages that I wanted. And then I just wanted something fresh. So it took me several years to start playing like this other move order with knight e2 and d4. And it just opens up a whole other world of possibilities from early on in the game.
Okay, very
It's
nice.
something to look into, especially where you're at. I think it, like even if you don't change a opening completely, like you're not changing from e4 to d4. If you change something a bit more subtle, like playing d4 in this specific variation with e6, you can learn a lot from it. And it might be uncomfortable in the short term, but in the long term, you'll just improve as a player.
Yeah, of course. All right, sounds good. Yeah.
So we can go through with the game because there's still maybe a few things to talk about, like in the structure that you got.
Yeah, let's
with
do
playing
that.
d3. You actually got like a very reasonable position, very standard. And then your opponent was doing some weird stuff, like b6, and then eventually like bishop b7 and casting queenside. And I feel like you just didn't know how to react to it, and you kind of you played a bunch of moves which really serve you no purpose in the long run, and then black was playing more purposeful moves, and then your position just collapsed. So it was a matter, like even around here, of finding a more direct plan. Like you play h3, kind of standard move here. You could have been very direct, like a bit more concrete here, and play this move. I'm curious if you even considered it. Play this move f5.
I considered it, but I wonder what was the follow up to it. I just didn't see
Right.
a plan afterwards.
It's a tricky move to calculate because it does give black a few options.
Yeah.
Like black can take, black can ignore it. But when you're considering playing this move, you kind of have to, I guess, go through the different possibilities black can play. And the first thing to understand about this move, you just want to open up some more lines for your pieces. Like you're making your rook a bit happier, you make your bishop happier, you clear the f4 square for the knight. And what you're trying to do is create some targets. After f5, there's two main targets that can pop up. The e6 pawn or the e6 square, and also the d5 square. So if we imagine black, let's say, takes on f5, this is maybe the first line to look at. You can take back. And this is amazing transformation for white, because d5 is now very vulnerable. Knight f4 is coming. And it's very likely you're going to have a strong outpost on f4. Also, the king is now a bit more uncomfortable too, just because the file's open.
Hmm.
And
And say the black castle's king side.
if black castle's kingside, probably knight
Knight
f4.
f4.
You do have to calculate tactics with knight f4, bishop takes f5. I have a feeling it should work though. I mean, you also have g4 ideas too. Like with your pawn on f5, it's scary for black to castle kingside here. But,
Yeah.
it's a nice position to be in because
interesting.
there's a lot of rich ideas for white. I would probably play knight f4. There's some long variation like takes knight d5. And there's just way too many targets. I think one of these things is going to be falling. Like if knight takes, you're just attacking too many things.
Yeah, and our bishop is beautiful now.
Yeah, this bishop. Yeah, if the diagonal opens up, it's very good for black.
Okay. So f5, and then pushing for black is a mistake.
So pushing, I mean, it just seriously weakens the d5 square. And you're actually in good position. Like wherever this king goes, you'll have potential to attack. Though maybe the king wants to stay in the center because the center is closed. But if the king ever castles kingside now, you have this very easy attack with g5 or g4, g5. I mean, right away you have this positional idea, bishop g5. You just want to take on f6 and put the knight on d5.
Put the knight, yeah.
And this is
nice.
This is really difficult for black.
Okay, last question. If they don't take it all,
if they just like leave the tension, like bishop e7, right?
E7, yeah, something like that.
So this is where e6 could now be very vulnerable. Bishop e7 is actually probably just a mistake because it leaves e6 or less defended. And now you start piling up on e6. You can take.
And then knight f4?
Takes and knight f4, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I was looking at this earlier. I had knight f4 immediately, which is very similar. Again, exploiting the fact that this pawn can't really move because d5 would be accessible.
Okay, good.
And
Man, yeah.
Oh yeah, one more key idea.
Go ahead.
Because after queen d7, let's say you take. Very important move for white in this position. How do you maximize the pressure?
Bishop h3.
Yeah, bishop h3 is deadly.
Okay.
There might be some like knight d8. You still have to work for it. Actually, knight d8, you have really nice move, knight d5. And now there's all these tactical ideas. Obviously, knight takes here as a threat. There's also taking twice on e6 and then knight c7 in the end. So black's position is just collapsing.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And if black ever takes, you just take back with pawn, and then you have your pawn on d5. e6 is just a goner. So it would have been really interesting if you knew to play this f5 move, or if you had f5 under your radar and you played it, like what your opponent would do to react to this. Because there's so many ways where black's position could turn sour very quickly.
Man, I think this is like the third time I think he told me to play f5 in a position where I should play f5, and I just didn't do it. Always with the idea of like not knowing what to do immediately next.
Yeah, like it's sometimes a scary move to play.
Yeah.
Because it's not entirely concrete. Like the variations aren't forcing. Yeah. It's just a matter of allowing more ideas to come and like developing some flow in the position.
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna play f5. I'm gonna think about
at least have it under your radar. Like be in a situation where it's a serious option, especially in positions like this. Like sometimes there's clues in terms of whether or not you should play this break. Like if black is underdeveloped and the king is still in the center and you're pretty much completed with development, then f5 is sometimes a no-brainer. If this were a blitz game, I don't know if I would be inclined to play f5. but it's the type of move you can play quickly without much calculation.
Sure.
Because you
Sure.
just see it opens up more ideas for your pieces.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.
So I think that's probably one of the major takeaways from this game, along with
Yeah.
playing this d4 move early.
Mm.
We could look at how things collapsed. Like you didn't have to lose so in a so one-sided fashion, but I know you want to have time for like developing a study plan too.
Yeah. How about you show me the critical moment where you thought that it went wrong?
Yeah.
And
I
we can
will
laugh at
say you
it.
had f5 in so many like cases, like the next 3 or 4 moves, like f5 here, still present in the position. Even f5 here, like after Black Castle's queenside. I know it feels weird to maybe
It does
trust on
feel
the side
weird.
that you're castled on and Black's king is on the queen side, but it still has the positional ideas of exploiting the d5 square. And if takes you, in this case, I guess it's more of a concrete calculation. You can play knight d5 immediately, and it's just kind of a forcing line. Black has to take, you take back. Wherever the knight moves, you'll grab the f5 pawn, say knight e5, you take, and it's a more pleasant position compared to what happened in the game because your bishops are doing some nice work.
Happier. Yeah.
And this bishop, actually both bishops for Black are a bit stuck. And you have breaks like you might consider playing d4 in the future or a5 in the future, even c4, a5. So all these pawn moves are present in the position.
Yeah, man, it just seems so logical looking back after the game. Like, you want your position to be open. So,
Yeah, I
okay,
mean, sometimes it's difficult, especially like, because I understand this being a close Sicilian player, it can be difficult to transform the position outside of your comfort zone.
yeah,
Where this is a completely new structure which doesn't necessarily resemble the Sicilian, and throughout the game you just kind of stuck with this close Sicilian structure. You're playing like very slowly, maybe somewhat passively, and then you just allow Black to get allowed Black to be the one dictating play.
yeah.
So yeah,
Okay,
like already around here things were looking a little bit unfortunate. Probably what you should have done is play h4 sooner to prevent Black from thrusting with like g5 or h4.
yeah,
When you played knight g1, it allowed Black to play h4 immediately. Just bound to open up on the king side. He played g5, and then yeah, this is looking really ugly.
all my pieces on the back rank.
Yeah. Bishop. Yeah, maybe bishop one in hindsight would have been better to at least have some more defense on the king side. Like there may have been some case where if you play bishop c1, knight d5, you would want your bishop to come to e1 and just kind of turtle up, just trying to get the storm. But then eventually he had to sacrifice. Rook e1 was probably the final mistake. But it's so easy to allow Black something in this position. Of course, rook e1 to kind of align your queen and rook. Knight e2 would have been a bit better. I think if you turn on the engine in this position, it does like -3 because there's all these sacrifices still on e4, which somehow work. But I think it would still be difficult for your opponent to proceed here, especially if he's not using an engine. Then it's hard to sacrifice on h4, and like if you have a few moves to try and consolidate, like bring the bishop to e1, maybe put the queen on h2, and just try and reinforce the structure, because of the pawns are closed, the only way Black can make progress is by sacrificing. So if you can deter any sacrifices, you might be able to hold on even from this position.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I think mentally I was just like out of it. I said,
Yeah, which is tough. I've been there before. Sometimes even when things are going way against you, you still want to kind of be fully aware, like mentally, of the situation. That okay, you can still make your opponent work to score the points.
Yeah. Okay. I'm good. I'm good with wrapping this one up.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I know, like going through games like this, it can bring back
Oh
pain,
man.
especially this sort of position. But I think there's lots of takeaways from this game. I really enjoyed like many different phases of this game, from like early opening deviation to what you could have done with this F5 break at many points. Um,
Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of value to this.
Every game is, you learn something, right? Even when you win or
Exactly.
lose.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I'm gonna share with you a Google Doc,
Sweet.
and we can kind of work in here. I gotta give it a name. Tim's study. Um, give me 1 sec. Okay, I just put the new Google Doc in the Lichess chat.
Oh, sweet. Okay, let me find that. I will say that like what we're about to do here, I'm probably going to do for myself like sometime later today.
Oh, good.
Because it's going to be a bit different for me because I have two like back-to-back tournaments coming up starting next week,
Hmm.
which I've done zero preparation for. So I'm going to create a doc which basically outlines my preparation for the next week and what I'll do um, in preparation for these tournaments, where I know like who I'm playing and what
Yeah.
exactly I need to study when it comes to openings. So I like don't let me forget. I'll probably share that with you just to give you some more insight into what I'll be
Oh,
thinking of.
I would love that. I was gonna ask
Yeah.
if you wanted to share it, but I didn't know that was asking for too
Oh, sure.
much.
Yeah. No, actually, no, it's better because that will hold me accountable. Like sometimes I'll be lazy and just like have some like brief outline of what I'm gonna do, but if I'm gonna share it with you, then I'm holding myself accountable to be more thorough.
All right,
So
good. Um, all right, where? Okay, maybe
so
we'll start.
there's many places to start.
Yeah.
And some of this like I'll will basically be some kind of homework for you to at least identify your goals when it comes to like overall study and improving. And these can be very basic. Um, but do I have the wait, give me 1 sec. I don't know what I did with the document. There we go. Oh, so I have access to this. Sweet. And we'll be a little informal here. We might organize things in a more concise fashion,
Of
but
course.
I would identify at least a few study goals, like things that you'll try and accomplish on a consistent basis.
Mhm.
So this could be like solving, I think, 10 exercises a week from imagination in chess.
Mm.
Um, this could be playing like training games online too.
Okay.
Um,
Um, the more concrete and specific, the better. Like if
exactly.
I wonder, like, would you recommend me do trading games? Would you recommend me do end game stuff? Would like, I'm
Yeah.
not.
So
I have a lot of ideas, but I'm not sure. Like, okay, which one is the right? Not there's no right answer, but what is the best
yeah,
approach?
and it's about finding balance. I don't know if there's like a true like best scenario. I can give you my recommendations about like having a nice balance where hopefully you won't get too burned out, and like the mix of things you're doing should benefit you. Um, First, let me ask you how many tournaments you have coming up, because it's important. Like the stuff that we're kind of outlining here is more general, but if you have tournaments coming up, then that can be
Sure. Um,
different.
I I play in two like all day tournaments a month,
Mhm.
and one uh one game a week uh at my chess club.
Okay. Oh, that's a lot
So
actually.
those are those are my actual games.
Gotcha.
So usually three games, so 6 games, and then 4 games.
And how much time do you have to like devote to chess on a daily or weekly basis in terms of studying and playing?
Um, it's fluctuating, but I would say about 10 to 15.
10
Um,
to 15 hours.
yeah, that would be like my
Okay.
goal. Sometimes like I play blitz and like it's not real
Yeah.
studying.
Which is completely fine. Like it's important to just like kind of chill and enjoy enjoy the game too.
yeah, I enjoy it. Sometimes it's just not productive, and I'm like, oh, I'm playing 1 minute for an hour. And I'm like, it's not helping me.
Okay, so let's map out like okay, so this is tournament play,
Yeah.
and this is like study. So you said like 10 to 15 hours per week. Of course, this could vary. So that's about like what, like 1 to 2 hours a day, or that
Yeah.
could be maybe some rest days and some days with a lot more. Um, 1 to 2
Yeah.
hours.
Oh, actually, this doesn't include the tournament games, right?
Um,
So
no.
okay, so maybe like 10 hours. So
Okay, so
let's just
about 10 hours per week. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, that sounds fair. Um, so I guess it's first a question like what to do in these 10 hours.
Yes.
And if you're already playing a tournament game a week and 2 tournaments per month, this is like already 15, about what, 15, 14 games.
Well, all the tournament is just 1 day, and it's usually 3 games that day. So it'll be 6 games a month. And
Oh, I see.
yeah.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. So that included all the tournaments. Okay. Oh, okay. So about 10 games a month. Um,
Yes.
so some time should be devoted just to annotating your games.
Mhm.
And let's actually break it down into what you can do, like how like what the study methods are, and then determine maybe what like determine the overall structure. So like annotating games, um, I think this is something that you do very well. Like out of all my students, you're probably the most thorough in annotating games, which is great. And
Oh,
coming up,
good.
like identifying questions, coming up with like key moments that you want to ask about, or identifying themes
Yeah.
across your games. Um, like out of all my students, like you by far the best at this.
Oh, thank you. I've been slacking on that. I haven't been annotating my recent ones, but I appreciate it.
But the ones that you annotate, or even though like you didn't annotate like the two that you mentioned for this lesson, you
Mhm.
still like identified the theme. Like, okay, this is an opening that you were kind of struggling with,
Yeah.
and then kind of figuring out what maybe what can be improved. Um, so I think annotating games is a big component, and we can even let's make a bulleted list. I'm gonna change. Oops, let's do that. So identifying themes and identifying. Actually, key moments where you were
Got
unsure
stuck.
of what to do or had questions about.
Mhm.
Save